Hey there, Stashers. Welcome to the CraftStash podcast, a special episode with a really good friend of mine. This is Lindsay.
Hey.
Who are you, Lindsay?
I'm a friend of yours.
Yeah.
So that makes me special, right?
I wanted to podcast with you for a little while now. My regular viewers know that I've kind of been wanting to shake things up a little bit, and
That's
we
awesome.
met a while ago. We've been friends for a little while now.
You know, I was trying to do the math the other day. I think it's like, could it possibly be 8 years?
Oh my God, really?
I think cheerleading was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
7 years? I don't know, something like that.
So we met, as Lindsay mentioned, doing something really, really fun and amazing. We were cheerleaders, not cheerleaders, for our local roller derby team, the Gotham Girls Roller Derby.
That's right. On the same team.
On the same team. We were both
What was it? Backseat Betties.
Backseat Betties, that's right,
For Bronx Gridlock.
for the Bronx Gridlock. And I don't know, were you on the team before I was? I think I was really late coming to the game.
You know, I think we had a couple,
Mm-hmm.
but not many.
You're not that much more senior than I am.
No.
So I wanted to chat with you because we're in Greg's studio, which is also your studio
Yeah.
as of a couple of months ago, since
Yeah.
November now.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 months ago, I emailed you and asked if Greg could help me find a studio space to, and you said, well, yes, he can. How about his?
Well, I wonder where.
Would his work?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it was funny because that was something that came out of nowhere. I was
Mhm.
looking for kind of a career shift, and my husband said, hey, how about you get a studio, a space where you can sew, because I had my sewing machine and all my fabric kind of jammed in my apartment.
It's very convenient for him to be like, you need more space. I want you to expand and grow. Just
Yes.
not in the apartment.
Exactly. So I don't have to climb over piles of fabric and craft supplies anymore. Why don't you get a studio? So, I was really excited when that happened.
Mhm.
And it ended up just really,
Really organically.
happening really fast, and it has been incredible.
So why are you in the studio, miss?
Well,
All these leading questions, right?
yeah. Well, I'm in the studio because I started a business called This Past Life that does. It started out because I was working in a cafe and I was wearing an apron that I had
Mhm.
made, and people were like, "Hey, it's an awesome little Star Trek apron."
Oh, cool.
And I'd get all these Trekkies come up and like, "What's your favorite episode? Is it the old Star Trek or the new Star Trek? Which one's your favorite?" And people were really enthused about it and asked if I could make them aprons, and then
Exciting.
people up from upstairs were coming, hearing from a friend that I was making aprons,
Mhm.
and the holiday seasons were coming up, and it just kind of tumbled into place.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose, or kind of what is the mainstay of the This Past Life?
Well, it started out as a web series where I was just really overwhelmed by technology and everything, and feeling really disconnected from my life and my relationships. And I decided that it'd be a good idea to just go back to basics as far as relationships are concerned. And so that has kind of evolved since I've always been kind of a vintage lover. It just kind of ended up being something that was focused on the 50s. And out of that came the idea that you could get the best of that time period with going back to, crafting, like
Right.
really old-fashioned crafting and old-fashioned communication. And that's kind of the principle behind This Past Life, is to bring the good things about that time period into a modern setting. I don't want to
Right.
recreate the 50s.
Right.
But I do think there's something to be gained from, taking lessons from that time.
So I feel like I remember watching those episodes, and because we were friends, I remember you saying, hey guys, you can't text me,
Yeah.
you can write me a letter, you can ring me on the telephone, and if I'm home, I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of a fun experiment even for your social circle, because
Yeah.
we wanted to keep in touch with you.
Yeah.
And having us work around those parameters was really kind of special, because whenever we did reach out, it was like, we really want to say something,
Yeah, well, and that's exactly was the purpose, and what ended up being the great thing about it was I felt like there was no passive interaction between me and my friends. It was always a choice that you made to be in contact with.
Definitely.
With me, or me reaching out to somebody.
Right.
So it was really nice.
So is that something that you find yourself doing every couple of months, like a kind of a cleanse, or is it?
It is a bit of a cleanse. It's every year, every April. I spend
okay.
a month living technologically in the 50s, and I try to document it in some way. That's kind of the exception to the 50s thing, because I do think that there's something to be gained from sharing it.
I agree.
But I don't, it's no phone, no email, no text, anything like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
What do you, okay, so I will put links to the fun stuff where people can kind of take a look later.
I'm excited.
But I wanted to also chat with you because, my show is supposed to be about knitting and crocheting and sewing and spinning, and it's usually about knitting.
Yeah, because you're a craft goddess.
No, I'm a craft other things, but I will take it for right now.
Take goddess.
I'll take goddess. But it's, I want to get back into sewing in particular because it's just nice to have something a little bit more practical than a scarf all the time. I think, now that it's getting warmer, I want to still wear things that I've handmade.
Yeah.
And knits are not always the way. So you're an amazing seamstress. You like to buy a lot of vintage clothing. And I think you know a lot about fabric and construction. So I wanted to chat with you about kind of like, not necessarily sewing 101, but the concept of if you want to integrate sewing and sewn things into your life the same way that people integrate knitting and knitted things into their lives. Where did you start?
I kind of it's funny, when we were talking a bit about this, I don't remember learning how to craft or how to sew or anything. It was something that was always a part of my life, and when I started doing the sewing stuff again, I talked to my mom a bit about it. She has this huge framed certificate of my great-grandmother's from a tailoring school. And it was neat to see that, and she worked at this fancy hotel in Colorado Springs as a tailor and seamstress, and it was neat to realize that was something that's always been in my life.
Right.
So that's kind of where I came from. As far as people, I think sewing is a really practical thing to be able to do. We live in New York City, right? It's $25 to take the hem up on a dress.
Right.
Or a pair of pants. And so I think it's an incredibly useful thing to do.
Yeah.
And can be really, really creative. And it really opens a lot of doors, I think, for, like you're talking about. You don't have to know immediately how to sew a whole dress.
Right.
You can
buy embellish something,
yeah.
right? You can fix. But we were just talking before we started recording about vintage shopping and thrift shopping and being able to buy something that's maybe not the best quality, soup it up a tiny bit, and save the money there. Yeah,
well, and you don't even have to go even vintage on it. You could buy a T-shirt and sew ribbons in a circle, or
Very true.
I just think it's opens up a lot of doors, or make curtains, or something that you can't find or having a difficult time finding. It's really easy to just buy some fabric and whip it up.
So if you're kind of chatting with someone who is DIY crafty inclined, but not necessarily with fabric and sewing, what are, not to talk about basics, but kind of what is the attitude and the kind of mental state that you should be in?
I think the first thing a lot of people struggle with when they start sewing is working the machine. I think people are scared of the machine. Yeah. And don't be scared. The hardest part is, threading it. Right. And then figuring out your moving fabric under the foot of the machine. I think the easiest way to start, and the way I remember starting, was with home accessories, like a pillow. Oh yeah, pillows, you can bang a pillow out in an hour. Super easy. And it gets you kind of feeling comfortable with the pedal and how fast the fabric is moving, and it's all in a straight line. And from there, I think it's easy to build. To make more elaborate pillows, you can start making blankets. Those things are a lot more accessible than heading straight for clothes. Although, I never sewed with a pattern growing up. Really? It was always let's make a shirt. And even when we did cheerleading and stuff. Or
definitely. You would just kind of cut something up and okay, let's pin it here. Yeah, pretty much. And
I think that's a really good place to start, is just to start to have fun with it. And then from there, it kind of just opens up. And you get excited about, I embellished that shirt. Maybe I can take it in at the waist. Maybe I could turn it into a skirt. And then it just kind of snowballs.
And I like that I think I keep going back to making clothing because I like knowing. I feel like if you, no matter what size and shape you are, if you have something that's tailored to you, and as you kind of get better at sewing, you definitely get better at tailoring.
Absolutely.
You look like $1,000,000 no matter what you're wearing, and almost no matter what your hair looks like, or it's a great place to start.
Yeah. Well, and you feel like $1,000,000. Like there is nothing better than somebody saying, "Oh my God, where did you get that dress?" And you go, I made it. I mean,
I know. It's the same feeling with knitting. But I feel like with sewing, it takes you the week, and with knitting, it'll take me like 6 months to make something. But it's definitely the greatest feeling where you're like...
Yeah, well, like I was just complimenting you on your socks. Like, it's amazing to me that you just made that.
It's so much fun, though.
Ugh. And they're so cute. Like, you're never going to find something that cute.
No, never.
Never.
Ever. Unless I make another pair. So let's, because you've got a couple of props with you.
I do, yeah.
Do you
want to talk about Gertie's?
Yeah, when we first started talking about like chatting and doing a show together, we were thinking about some of the resources that we really liked, and you mentioned this one book that you felt like was amazing.
Yeah. I just started, like I said, I don't really sew from patterns now, but that's like never been my strong suit. I kind of like just making things up. So I've never really gotten into the sewing books that much.
Right.
I'll like flip through them for the pretty pictures and to get inspiration and ideas. But this is the first book that I've ever gotten where I was just wandering around in a bookstore and flipped it open and it was like, I have to have this book.
What's it called?
It's called Gertie's New Book for Better Sewing. And she's super cute. I want her to be my friend, which is why I opened the book up to begin with.
Right, so packaging was kind of what brought you to it.
Absolutely, and it's focused on vintage techniques.
Okay.
Which is what...
What does that mean, vintage techniques?
Vintage techniques is, there's a lot of it's kind of a more time-consuming technique that's focused on a lot of hand stitching and finishing seams without a serger.
Oh, great. Perfect.
So it's something you can do on just a straight machine. You don't need a fancy...
It's more accessible, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need a fancy machine. Anything that will sew a straight stitch, you can do with... And a zigzag is nice to have.
Right.
But you can do it all. But what's really cool about this book is she talks also about... It's a comprehensive vintage sewing kind of guide. So it talks a lot about the fabrics and what... There were a lot of different fabrics used in the 50s,
right, or
mid-century, I guess is a better way to say that, that aren't around now. So she kind of translates that. So if you get an old pattern, it says, I don't know, some sort of weird fabric, you don't know what that is.
Right.
She translates that. She also shows you how to, we were talking a bit about this before, how to alter vintage patterns because I'm a curvy girl.
Right, and we're a different kind of curvy than they were back in the 40s and 50s and 60s.
Yeah, and so a lot of patterns in the bigger sizes are hard to find, and then if they fit in the waist, then, they don't fit in the top.
Right.
So she shows you how to do that, and then there are patterns included in it. So.
And that's also probably nice because I guess if you're following some of her patterns, you're learning, well, if I'm taking in this vintage pattern, for me, I always have to take it in the bust or whatever.
Yeah.
If I'm going to either deconstruct someone else's pattern or take apart a piece of clothing that I already own, I now know the skills that, like, for my body, I'm generally smaller up here or whatever it is. So it's, like, translatable skills, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it, like I said, it's comprehensive. So it's not just how to alter a pattern, which could be a whole book in itself.
Right.
It's the, not beginner's guide, but, like, sets you the basics. And I think that that's a really cool way to package all of it.
Which is your favorite pattern in the book? Do you have one?
Oh my God, right now I make a lot of dresses. So there are a lot of dresses in here that are incredible, but there's a top with a pussy bow, so it's the one at the neck.
Oh, cute.
And I have a hard time finding those that are more shaped in the waist. They tend to look kind of balloony, like a garbage bag on me.
Oh no, yeah.
So I'm excited. That's the one I'm going to try first.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So now that you're shopping for fabric, I guess, for this one pattern, are you looking for fabrics that match the pattern, or are you...
Yeah, that's one thing that becomes in more advanced sewing a really huge part of it. When you're first starting out, I think cotton's just the way to go. Like, you can rip cotton apart, you don't need a special needle, it's not a big deal. But as it gets more advanced, you have to make sure if you have a drapey fabric that you go with a pattern that is aware of that. And that becomes the fun part, but it does become more tedious and complicated to You have to plan it out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Where do you mostly buy like fabrics in real life, or do you buy stuff online?
Yeah, that's tricky. You know, like fabrics are so expensive here.
Yeah.
And even if you go down, you know, like Mood is incredible. If you just want to go and touch
and
fabric,
just like geek out on fabric. Yeah.
Incredible. Or anything kind of in that fashion district, even like the little like weird places with the bolts of fabric just like jammed into it.
Those are the best though.
They're kind of the best.
Amazing things.
Yeah, and you can usually, the price is usually a bit negotiable.
Right.
So that's fun to just touch and understand what they are.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I think it's hard to do online if you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm only aware of like the calico cotton and the quilting cotton.
Yeah.
And the jersey, but there's different kinds of jersey, so advice is to kind of, if you're going to get into sewing, not necessarily to buy, but go to a fabric shop just to kind of understand what the different fabrics are.
Absolutely. Touch it, understand the stretch and the bias of it, and like just get it in your hands. I would never, if you're starting out, just go, I mean, you could, if it's cotton or something, go buy some fabulous cotton online and just sew something up. But if you're going to spend some money on a fabric, go touch it first, I think.
So what are your favorite, either online or in real life, sources for fabric?
I'm all about eBay.
Oh, wow.
I'm all about eBay.
I'm so intimidated by eBay.
It's intense. And you got to have a like plan of attack. You got to like, oh, I kind of like that. I'm going to watch it first. And then you have to like wait and poach it at the last minute, you know.
Wow.
Because you don't want to run the price up.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think you can find good stuff that's
interesting.
At least as cheap as, well, for here. I'm sure people have great places in other parts of the country that are like big.
Much more accessible.
Yeah. fabric-y places.
Yeah.
But
that's true. I think I'm always coming at it from like a knitter and yarn person perspective, and yarn is kind of hit or miss depending on where you live. A lot of local yarn stores have had to be closing, but I think Joann's is still a great place for fabric, and they're everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and they have, especially if you're, just want something basic. They have great fabric. A lot of my fabric is, not a lot of it, some of it's from Joann, like the really basic polka dots and stripes and stuff like that, because it's just easy. Yeah.
You also have another pattern hiding back there, and I was really interested in it because it's kind of amazing construction-wise, right? Yeah,
so this is, Gertie talks a little bit about it in the book. This is one of the the vintage patterns that are coming out now.
So it's a reproduction? Okay.
So it's a new pattern, but it's the old design. So it's on better tissue and stuff like that. The pattern is cut out.
To your earlier point, do you know if they've resized it for more modern bodies?
They have resized it, but not really. I mean, it's still like the weird numbers, like if you're a size 8, it's really like a size, 16, I think, or something like that in vintage. So you should always be aware of that with vintage fabrics or vintage patterns. Don't buy make sure you look up what your size is.
Right.
Because if you buy a size 8, it's going to be like for a doll.
A tool. Yeah. A size 2 or something.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
I've done that. I did that. But what's cool about this pattern is that it is only, I believe it's 2 pieces, maybe 3 pieces for the skirt, because it is a full skirt, but it's a wrap dress. And when they first made this is back in the, I want to say early 50s when this first came out. Because it would be after after the war and after Dior came out with the new shape, the fitted hourglass shape. Women were making all their own clothes because you didn't really go in and buy something at a shop. It's too expensive and not very practical. So they came out with this pattern for women who couldn't really sew, who were not very good at it.
That's great.
And it was called something like the breakfast to lunch. I can't remember the name of it, but you could do it in an afternoon, so you could start sewing in the morning and take it and wear it to tea.
Okay, sure.
And this is an exciting place to start if you want to make a dress.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's really, the most complicated thing is just the edging on it, the trim on it, but it'll take you 2 hours. It's straight line. You have to get a lot of fabric to do it because it's a full skirt. But when they first came out with this pattern, it was, they sold out. Like they couldn't.
I'm sure.
And that was when you had to order them.
Yeah.
And so they got really backstopped, like couldn't get the orders out fast enough. People were going nuts over this pattern, and when they came out with it again, the same thing happened.
That's funny.
So I think that there's a place
this
for
is like the little black dress of hand-sewn dresses.
Exactly. Where you're like, I want to make a dress, but
very cute.
I don't want to deal with darts.
Well, I'm excited to see you make it, and
yeah,
you gave me some hot tips on where I can get my my sewing machine service. So we'll see. Maybe I'll make it as well. Because I'm a huge fan of full skirts because I think they're amazing.
And they make your waist look so fabulous and tiny.
Yeah, and you just carry yourself differently. I mean, first of all, you've made the dress. Second of all, you've got all of this amazing fabric just kind of swirling around you.
Yeah. Well, and this one's cool because you could do one color on the front, shows here on the front, and another color on the back, so it makes it look very like nice. You planned it out.
Very nice. That's exciting.
Yeah, I like it.
What else are you doing to keep yourself busy? What's got you excited about spring or life or being back in the city? You were just traveling a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really excited right now about painting all of a sudden. That's something that I used to draw a lot, and I haven't done in a really long time, and I think that's what I'm going to be exploring. I'd really like to also explore, there's a lot of textiles coming back to the U.S. I don't know if you saw this. There's a great article, maybe I'll try to send you the link, about textiles coming back to the U.S. and they can't find people
like being made here. Oh,
they can't find people who have the skill to make it.
Interesting.
And sewers as well, and so they're having these huge programs where they're hiring and training people almost like in an apprentice program.
That's really exciting
to sew.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can find that article.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
I'm kind of excited about the idea of doing textile design with kind of integrating painting or painting ideas.
That's why I like the crafty world, because you can let one thing inspire you in a totally different application.
Yeah. I'm all about that.
Awesome.
Well, and even Greg's stuff is very graphic. Like that's a...
Yeah, I'm sure if you're...
I'll
show pictures of the studio and like the sewing side and the painting side, but if you were staring at this all day, I could definitely see how that would influence you to want to start playing with color on paper.
Yeah, and definitely like he has a very like graphic 60s kind of thing going on.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
I dig it.
Awesome. Cross-pollination.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, thanks for chatting with us, Lindsay.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Yay! All right, guys. So if you can't craft it, stash it or sew it. Cheers.
Bye.